The text from my mother came at 8 a.m. on Sunday. Family brunch at Maison today. Your sister made reservations. Please dress appropriately, it's very upscale. I was sitting in my home office in Boston, reviewing the final documents for the biggest acquisition of my career. Maison Restaurant Group, 12 high-end establishments across the Northeast, including the flagship Maison in Manhattan where my family was apparently having brunch. The same restaurant group I'd just purchased for $340 million. I called my mother back. Good morning, sweetheart. Did you get my text about brunch? I did. What time? 11:30. Your sister worked so hard to get this reservation. Maison is nearly impossible to book, 6-month waiting list. But Caroline knows someone who knows someone. Isn't that wonderful? Caroline. My younger sister who'd married a hedge fund manager and now spent her days networking and name-dropping. She'd been bragging about her Maison connections for months. That's impressive, I said. It is. Which is why I need to ask a favor. Could you perhaps, I don't know, keep a low profile? Caroline is bringing potential clients, very important people. Your father and I want to make the right impression. What kind of impression would I make? Boss. Well, darling, you know how you are. All that talk about restaurants and hospitality management. People might think you're in the service industry. At a place like Maison, they're very particular about clientele. I looked at the documents on my screen. Cascade Hospitality Group, the company I'd built from one struggling Boston bistro into a portfolio of 37 restaurants worth $800 million. The company that had just acquired Maison for cash. I understand, I said quietly. I knew you would. You've always been sensible. Just come enjoy the meal, let Caroline shine. She's worked so hard for this. After I hung up, I texted my COO. Status on Maison transition? All complete. Staff briefing this morning. You're listed as owner in all systems. Want me to notify the Manhattan location about your visit? Not yet. Let's keep it quiet. I arrived at Maison Manhattan at 11:20. The restaurant occupied a converted brownstone in the Upper East Side, all marble and brass and floor-to-ceiling windows. Very elegant. Very expensive. Very much the kind of place Caroline would choose to impress people. The hostess greeted me with a professional smile. Good morning. Do you have a reservation? I'm joining the Brennan party. She checked her tablet. Ah yes, the VIP table. This way please. She led me through the main dining room, where several tables of well-dressed diners were eating, to a private alcove in the back. The VIP table was tucked away near the kitchen, partially hidden by a decorative screen. Not actually a VIP table. More like where they put people who thought they were VIPs. My family was already seated. Mom in a pastel suit, Dad in a blazer, Caroline in designer, everything with her husband Blake looking self-important. And 2 other couples I didn't recognize. Blake's clients, presumably. Emma. Mom's smile was tight. You made it. Everyone, this is my other daughter, Emma. Emma, these are the Harrisons and the Mitchells. They're considering investing with Blake's firm. I shook hands, noting how Caroline positioned herself at the head of the table, already holding court. This restaurant is incredible, Mrs. Harrison was saying. Caroline, how did you ever get a reservation? I've been trying for months. Caroline smiled, clearly pleased. Oh, I have connections. The owner's daughter went to school with a friend of mine. One phone call and we had the VIP table. She gestured around the alcove like it was a throne room. They don't give this table to just anyone. I bit my lip to keep from laughing. The VIP table was table 47, typically reserved for large parties they wanted to keep out of sight. The actual VIP tables were in the front window, numbers 1 through 4, where people could see and be seen. So impressive, Mr. Mitchell said. This is exactly the kind of access we're looking for. Someone well-connected who knows the right people. Blake preened. Caroline's network is extraordinary. She can get us into anywhere. Emma, what do you do? Mrs. Harrison asked politely. Before I could answer, Mom jumped in. Emma works in the restaurant business. Management, that sort of thing. Oh, how nice, Mrs. Harrison said in that tone that meant she'd lost interest. That must be steady work. It is, I agreed. Caroline leaned forward. Emma's being modest. She manages a little place in Boston. It's very cute. Neighborhood spot, casual dining. Nothing like this of course, but she does well. Blake nodded. The service industry is important. Someone has to work those jobs. I took a sip of water and said nothing. The waiter appeared. A young man named David who I recognized from the staff files I'd reviewed that morning. He took drink orders with practiced efficiency. Caroline flagged him down as he turned to leave. "Excuse me, could you ask the chef to prepare something off menu? I have very specific dietary requirements." David's smile didn't waver. "I'll ask, ma'am, but our chef prefers not to deviate from the menu. Each dish is carefully crafted." "I don't think you understand," Caroline said, voice hardening. "This is the VIP table. I'm personal friends with the owner's daughter. One phone call and I can have you replaced." David's face went carefully blank. "Of course, ma'am. I'll speak with the chef." After he left, Caroline smiled at the table. "You have to be firm with staff. They respond to authority." I watched David's retreating back, saw the tension in his shoulders. Made a mental note. Brunch arrived in waves. Eggs Benedict, lobster omelets, truffle scrambled eggs, fresh pastries. Everything was perfect. Exactly the quality I'd expected when I reviewed Maison's operations. Conversation flowed around me. Caroline talked about her charity boards. Blake discussed his firm's returns. The Harrisons and Mitchells asked questions about connections and access. My parents smiled and nodded, clearly pleased with how the meal was going. No one asked about my work beyond Mom's dismissive introduction. Halfway through the meal, the restaurant manager appeared. A woman named Sofia Rodriguez who'd been with Maison for 8 years. I'd spoken with her by phone 3 times during the acquisition process. She approached our table with a professional smile. "Good morning. I wanted to check that everything is satisfactory." "Wonderful," Caroline said. "Though I did have to speak to our waiter about being more accommodating. You might want to train your staff better on VIP service." Sophia's smile tightened. "I'll make a note of that. May I ask who you are?" "Caroline Brennan. I secured this reservation through the owner's daughter. Perhaps you've heard of me." "I haven't, no. But then I've worked here 8 years and the owner doesn't have a daughter." Sophia's tone was polite ice. "She has 3 sons, none of whom are involved in reservations." Caroline went pink. "Well, it was a friend of someone who knows. Your reservation came through our standard booking system. There's no note about special connections or VIP status." Sophia glanced at me and I saw recognition flicker in her eyes. "Though I see we have an actual VIP at this table." Everyone turned to look at me. "I'm sorry," Mom said. Sophia smiled. "Ms. Brennan, I don't believe we've been properly introduced. I'm Sofia Rodriguez, General Manager of Maison Manhattan." "And you're?" "Emma Brennan," I said quietly. "Ms. Emma Brennan, CEO of Cascade Hospitality Group. Our new owner as of 9 a.m. this morning." Sophia's smile widened. "Welcome to your restaurant, Madame C." The silence at the table was absolute. Caroline's face drained of color. "What?" "The acquisition was finalized this morning," Sophia continued. "Cascade Hospitality purchased the entire Maison Restaurant Group. Ms. Brennan now owns all 12 locations including this one." He turned to me. "I apologize for seating your party at table 47. Had I known you were dining with us, I would have reserved table 1. "Table 47 is fine," I said. "You own this restaurant?" Blake's voice cracked. "This restaurant? I own this restaurant chain. All 12 locations. Cascade Hospitality completed the acquisition at 9 a.m. I kept my tone casual. "We also own 37 other restaurants across the Northeast. Maison was our largest acquisition to date." Mom's champagne glass tilted, forgotten in her hand. "Emma, you said you managed a restaurant." I said I worked in restaurant management. I'm CEO of Cascade Hospitality. I've been building the company for 12 years. Started with one failing bistro in Boston that I bought for $200,000, renovated, and turned into the flagship for what became a $800 million portfolio. Dad had gone pale. $800 million? That was our valuation before the Maison acquisition. We paid $340 million cash for Maison, which brings the total portfolio value to about $1.1 billion. I smiled. Give or take. The Harrisons and Mitchells were staring. Mrs. Mitchell found her voice first. You built a $1 billion restaurant empire? From the ground up. Started working in restaurants at 16. Dishwasher, line cook, server, manager. Learned every position. Saved money, got a loan, bought my first property at 25. Built from there. Caroline looked like she might be sick. But you never told us you owned. I tried. At Thanksgiving 3 years ago, I mentioned opening our 15th location. Dad asked if I was still playing restaurant. At Christmas, I talked about expanding into New York. Mom changed the subject to your wedding planning. At Easter, I tried to explain our growth strategy. You said it sounded boring and asked about my dating life. Each sentence landed like a hammer blow. You said you managed a neighborhood spot, Blake said weakly. Caroline said that. I never corrected her because you all seemed so certain about what I did without bothering to ask. I turned to Sophia. What was the complaint about David? Sophia's expression darkened. Ms. Caroline Brennan demanded off-menu items and threatened David's job, claiming she had connections to ownership. I see. I looked at Caroline. You threatened to have a staff member fired. At a restaurant I own. While sitting at a table you claim to have secured through connections that don't exist. I didn't know. Caroline's voice was desperate. Emma, I didn't know it was your restaurant. Would it have mattered? Would you have treated David with respect if you'd known? Or would you have found another server at another restaurant to bully? I stood. Sophia, could you move my family to table 1? They clearly deserve the VIP experience Caroline promised her guests. Of course, Madam CEO. And the other matter. Comp their entire meal. On me. Though going forward, this table is banned from all Cascade Hospitality properties. All 12 Maison locations and all 37 other restaurants. Caroline can explain to her connections why they're no longer welcome. Caroline's face went from white to red. You can't, that's not fair. I can, and it is. I don't tolerate customers who abuse my staff. That's company policy across all properties. I turned to the Harrisons and Mitchells. I apologize that your brunch has been disrupted. The meal is complimentary, and if you'd like to discuss restaurant industry investments, I'm happy to share my experience building Cascade. Mr. Harrison stood immediately, extending his hand. Ms. Brennan, I'd be very interested in that conversation. Your growth trajectory is remarkable. As Sophia led us to table 1, the premium window seat with views of the street, I heard my family's frantic whispers behind me. At the new table, the Harrisons and Mitchells peppered me with questions. How I'd scaled so quickly. How I'd maintained quality across properties. How I'd identified acquisition targets. Real questions about real business. My parents and Caroline sat at their comp table in the alcove, no longer looking like VIPs. Just looking small. After an hour, as I was finishing my coffee, Mom appeared at my elbow. Emma, please. Can we talk? I excused myself from the Harrisons and followed her to a quiet corner. I don't understand, she said. Why didn't you tell us? About the company, about your success. I tried, Mom. Repeatedly. You weren't interested. You heard restaurant work, and decided I wasn't impressive. That I was just someone working in the service industry, as Blake so kindly put it. We didn't mean. You asked me to keep a low profile today. To let Caroline shine. Because you were embarrassed by me. By my work. By what you assumed was my lack of success. Tears streamed down her face. I'm so sorry. I know you are. But Caroline just got us banned from our own family members' restaurants because she treated my employee like garbage. Blake called my life's work. Those jobs someone has to do. And you introduced me as someone who works in management, that sort of thing, like it was embarrassing. What can we do? Nothing. Not today. I softened slightly. Maybe someday we'll figure out how to have a relationship where you value me for who I actually am, not who you assumed I was. But not today. I returned to table 1, where the Harrisons were waiting with business cards and genuine interest in my work. As I left an hour later, I stopped by the kitchen to thank the staff, including David, whose face lit up when I told him he'd handled Caroline perfectly. You own all of this? He asked, gesturing around the kitchen. I do. And people like you, who show up every day, who do excellent work, who maintain standards even when customers are difficult, you're why it works. In the Uber back to Boston, my phone exploded. Texts from Caroline apologizing. From Blake trying to network. From my parents begging to talk. And one from Sophia. Staff is thrilled to know the new owner has our backs. That ban was the talk of the kitchen. You just earned everyone's loyalty. I smiled and opened my laptop. Maison integration plans to review. Staff training to schedule. A new acquisition target in Philadelphia to evaluate. I'd built an empire from washing dishes to ownership. From one failing bistro to 49 restaurants worth over $1 billion. I'd done it while my family assumed I was barely scraping by. And today in the restaurant I now owned, they'd learned the truth. That the daughter they'd tried to hide was the one who could ban them from Sunday brunch. Permanently. 3 months later, I received a handwritten letter from Caroline. Not a text, not an email, actual stationery with her monogram. Emma, I've spent 12 weeks thinking about that brunch. About how I treated David. About how I treated you. I told Blake what really happened and he's mortified. The Harrisons invested with your company instead of his firm. They said they respect someone who built something real rather than someone who married into connections. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I've started volunteering at a soup kitchen. Actually serving food. Actually seeing the people I used to look down on. Mom was right about one thing. You've always been the sensible one. The difference is you were also the successful one. And we were too blind to see it. Your sister Caroline. I folded the letter and placed it in my desk drawer. Maybe next year I'd lift the ban. Or maybe I'd wait until she learned that sorry required action, not just words. Either way, I had restaurants to run.